There is a quiet truth about children who grow up ignored. It is not always dramatic. There are no raised voices, no slammed doors. Sometimes the wound is simply this. No one turned around. No one asked. No one noticed the small person standing in the doorway, waiting to be seen. You might have been that child, the one who learned early that your feelings were too much, or perhaps not enough, that your presence was easier to forget than to hold. And so you adapted. You became small in all the ways that mattered. You learned not to ask, not to need, not to expect that anyone would turn towards you with curiosity or care. This is the architecture of emotional neglect. It is built in silence. It leaves no visible bruises, no evidence that would convince a stranger something was wrong. But you carry it still, in the way you apologize for taking up space, in the way you struggle to name what you feel, in the exhausting belief that love must be earned through perfection, through silence, through erasing the inconvenient truth of your own existence. What happens to a child who grows up unseen? What happens to their brain, their sense of self, their capacity to connect? And perhaps most importantly, can that invisible wound ever truly heal? These are not abstract questions. They live in your body, in the tightness of your chest when someone asks what you need, in the way you scan every room for signs of approval or disappointment, in relationships where you give and somehow still feel like you are not enough. Today, we are going to walk through that quiet wound together. We will name what was taken from you. We will understand how your brilliant, adaptive mind learned to survive an environment where your emotional reality did not matter. And we will explore what it means to reclaim yourself, to become visible again. Not to the world first, but to the one person who has been waiting the longest to be seen, you. Picture a child at the dinner table, not crying, not misbehaving, just sitting there, small hands folded, watching the adults talk over and around them, as if they were furniture. The child has something to say, something that happened at school, something that made them feel bright and alive. But the moment to speak never comes, or it comes and passes, interrupted, forgotten before the sentence is complete. The child learns. They learn that their inner world is not particularly interesting to anyone else, that excitement should be tempered, that sadness should be private, that the safest way to exist is to need nothing, to feel nothing too intensely, to become a kind of emotional ghost in their own home. This is not always cruelty. Sometimes it is exhaustion. Parents too, depleted to turn toward one more need. Sometimes it is distraction. Generations of people who were also never taught to recognize the emotional lives of children. Sometimes it is simply misunderstanding. The belief that a child who is fed and clothed and housed is a child who is fine. But children do not experience love as a checklist of material needs met. They experience love as attention, as curiosity, as the feeling that their internal experience matters, enough for someone to ask about it, to sit with it, to reflect it back so they know it is real. Without this mirroring, something essential goes missing. The child begins to doubt their own emotional reality. They feel sad, but no one notices. And so perhaps the sadness is not legitimate. They feel excited, but no one shares the excitement. And so perhaps joy is something to be ashamed of, something excessive and inconvenient. Have you ever seen a child stop trying? It happens slowly. The hand that used to shoot up in class stays down. The stories that used to tumble out at bedtime grow shorter, then stop altogether. The child who once ran to greet you at the door learns to stay in their room. This is not defiance. This is adaptation. This is a nervous system learning that connection is unreliable, that vulnerability is dangerous, that the safest version of yourself is the one that asks for nothing. And here's the cruelest part. The child does not blame the adults. Children almost never do. Instead, they internalize the neglect as evidence of their own inadequacy. If no one is interested in my feelings, it must be because my feelings are not interesting. If no one asks how I am, it must be because how I am does not matter. If I am this easy to overlook, I must be fundamentally forgettable. This is the original wound. Not what happened, but what did not happen. Not the presence of harm, but the absence of recognition. And that absence becomes the lens through which they will see themselves for years, perhaps decades to come. Now let us look beneath the surface into the architecture of the developing brain, where these early experiences are not simply remembered, but encoded into the very structure of who we become. In the field of attachment theory, pioneered by John Bowlby and later expanded by Mary Ainsworth, we understand that children are not born with a fixed sense of self. They discover who they are through the eyes of their caregivers. When a parent consistently responds to a child's emotional cues with attention and attunement, the child learns a fundamental lesson. I matter. My internal experience is real and worthy of response. I am safe to feel what I feel, but when those cues are met with indifference, with distraction, with a kind of benign absence, a different lesson is encoded. The child develops what psychologists call an insecure attachment style, often specifically avoidant attachment. They learn that emotional needs are burdensome, that expressing vulnerability leads nowhere, that the path to survival is self-sufficiency and emotional suppression. This is not a conscious decision. This is the nervous system doing exactly what it was designed to do: adapt to its environment. If your environment taught you that no one is coming when you cry, your brain stops wasting energy on crying. If your environment taught you that your excitement irritates the people you depend on, your brain learns to dampen that excitement before it even fully forms. The neuroscience here is striking. Childhood is a period of extraordinary neuroplasticity, when the brain is forming the neural pathways that will become its default patterns. Emotional neglect during these critical years affects the development of several key brain regions. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for emotional regulation and self-awareness, may develop differently when a child does not receive consistent help in understanding and managing their feelings. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, may become hypervigilant, constantly scanning for signs of rejection or dismissal. The hippocampus, involved in memory and stress response, can actually be measurably smaller in adults who experience childhood emotional neglect. What this means in practical terms is that emotional neglect changes not just how you think about yourself, but how your brain processes emotion, threat, and connection. It becomes harder to identify what you are feeling because no one ever helped you name those feelings. It becomes harder to trust your own perceptions because your perceptions were so often invalidated or ignored. It becomes harder to believe that other people will care about your inner world because the first people who were supposed to care did not, Psychologist Jonas Webb, who has written extensively on childhood emotional neglect, describes something she calls emotional neglect schema. These are the core beliefs that form in the absence of emotional attunement. Beliefs like, my feelings are a problem. I should be able to handle everything on my own. Needing something from someone else makes me weak. Other people's feelings matter more than mine. I am too much or not enough, or both somehow at the same time. These schemas become the operating system of your psyche. They run quietly in the background, shaping every interaction, every decision, every moment of self-evaluation. And because they were formed so early, before you had language to question them, they feel not like beliefs but like truths. Not like something you learned, but like something you are. But here is what we must understand. Adaptation is not destiny. The brain that learned to survive emotional scarcity is the same brain that can learn, slowly and with support, to recognize emotional abundance. Neuroplasticity does not end in childhood. The pathways can be rewired. The schemas can be questioned. This is familiarity. Your nervous system recognizes the distance, the need to guess at what someone else is feeling, the exhausting work of trying to earn attention that should be freely given. It feels like home, because it is home. The old wound knows this territory. Or perhaps you become the one who is overly available, who gives and anticipates and manages everyone else's emotions, while your own remain carefully hidden. You become the caretaker, the problem solver, the one who never asks for help because asking feels like exposing a shameful weakness. Your relationships are built on your usefulness, not your humanity. And somewhere deep down, you believe this is the only way you can be loved. You struggle with boundaries because boundaries require a belief that your needs and preferences matter as much as anyone else's. But if your formative years taught you that your needs were invisible, that your preferences were inconvenient, then setting a boundary feels not like self-care, but like cruelty. It feels selfish. It feels wrong. And so you say yes when you mean no. You tolerate what should not be tolerated. You contort yourself into shapes that make you easier to love, never quite realizing that what you are offering is not actually yourself. In professional settings, you may overwork to the point of burnout, driven by a belief that your value is measured entirely by your productivity. You find it difficult to advocate for yourself, to ask for raises or recognition, because somewhere in you lives the old conviction that you do not deserve to take up space unless you have earned it through relentless effort. The idea of simply being valued for who you are, not what you produce, feels fantastical, impossible. And then there is the internal landscape, the relationship you have with your own emotional life. You may experience what therapists call alexithymia, difficulty identifying and describing your own emotions. Someone asks how you are feeling and you genuinely do not know. The signal is there, somewhere in your body, but you never learned to read it. Or you learned to ignore it so thoroughly that now it speaks only in the language of physical symptoms. Headaches, digestive issues, chronic tension that no amount of stretching can release. You may also experience persistent low-grade depression or anxiety that does not seem to be about anything in particular. This is what trauma therapist Bessel van der Kolk calls the body keeping the score. Your conscious mind may have moved on, may have rationalized your childhood as fine, as normal, as not that bad. But your body remembers the loneliness. Your nervous system remembers the vigilance. And that memory expresses itself as a constant background hum of unease, a feeling that something is wrong, even when, objectively, everything is fine. Perhaps most painfully, you may struggle with a profound sense of emptiness. Not sadness exactly, but a hollowness where a solid sense of self should be. You look to others to tell you who you are, to validate your experiences, to confirm that you are real. Because when you were a child, no one reflected you back to yourself. No one said, "I see you, I hear you, what you feel matters." And so you never quite learned to see yourself. Invisibility became not just something that happened to you, but something you are. This is the long shadow of emotional neglect. It teaches you to abandon yourself before anyone else can. It teaches you that your worthiness is conditional, that love is something you must earn through silence and self-erasure. It teaches you that the safest way to live is to need nothing, to feel nothing too deeply, to move through the world like a ghost, haunting your own life. But you are not a ghost. You never were. You are a person who learned to survive an impossible situation by making yourself small. And survival, for all its costs, is also a testament to your strength. The same adaptability that shaped these patterns can be redirected toward healing. The same brain that learned to protect you through invisibility can learn, finally, to protect you through presence. Healing from emotional neglect does not look like what we see in movies. There is no single cathartic moment, no dramatic confrontation that suddenly makes everything clear. Instead, healing is quieter than that. It is 1,000 small choices to turn toward yourself instead of away. It is learning, slowly and sometimes clumsily, to become the attentive presence you needed as a child. The first step is often the hardest: acknowledgement. You must name what happened, or more accurately, what did not happen. This requires you to challenge a story you may have been telling yourself for decades. My childhood was fine. I had food and shelter. Other people had it worse. These statements may all be true, and still, you can have been neglected. Emotional neglect does not require malice or visible cruelty. It only requires absence, and that absence left a mark. Acknowledgement means allowing yourself to grieve, not the childhood you had, but the childhood you needed and did not receive. The parent who would have asked about your day and actually listened. The adult who would have noticed when you were struggling and sat with you in that struggle. The home where your feelings were treated as information rather than inconvenience. These things did not happen, and it is okay to feel the loss of them, even now, even years later. From acknowledgement comes the work of reparenting yourself. This is not a metaphor. This is a literal practice of offering yourself the attunement you were denied. When you notice an emotion rising in your body, you pause. You place a hand on your chest or your belly. You ask gently, "What am I feeling right now?" Not what should I be feeling, not what is reasonable to feel, but what is actually present. And then, crucially, you listen. You give your internal experience the attention it has been begging for. This feels strange at first, artificial. You may hear an internal voice that says this is self-indulgent, that you are being dramatic, that you should just get over it. That voice is the echo of neglect. It is the internalized message that your feelings do not matter. And part of healing is learning to recognize that voice, not as truth, but as old protection that you no longer need. Therapy, particularly approaches like internal family systems, or EMDR, or somatic therapy can be profoundly helpful here. These modalities understand that emotional neglect is not just a cognitive problem that can be thought through. It is a nervous system problem, a relational problem, a problem that lives in the body. A skilled therapist becomes the attuned presence you never had, reflecting your experience back to you with consistency and care, until you begin to internalize that capacity for yourself. But healing also happens in relationships with others. Every moment of healthy connection becomes like a drop of water, wearing away the stone of old wounds. A friend who asks how you are and waits for the real answer. A partner who can tolerate your vulnerability without trying to fix it or dismiss it. A community where you are valued not for what you do, but simply for being present. These experiences teach your nervous system a new pattern. Connection is possible. Visibility is safe. You can be seen and still be loved. Healing means learning to set boundaries, which is really learning to honor your own needs as legitimate. It means practicing saying no without elaborate justification. It means recognizing that disappointing someone else does not make you a bad person. It means understanding that your job is not to manage everyone else's emotions at the expense of your own. It also means reclaiming your right to take up space, to speak in meetings without apologizing first, to share your accomplishments without downplaying them, to exist in your full dimensionality rather than the flattened, convenient version of yourself you learned to present. This will feel uncomfortable. You may brace for rejection, for the punishment that feels inevitable when you stop making yourself small. But often, the punishment does not come. Often, what comes instead is respect, connection. The dawning realization that people can actually prefer the real you to the carefully managed version you have been offering. Healing does not mean the wound disappears. You will still have moments when the old patterns resurface, when you catch yourself shrinking, or over-explaining, or waiting for permission to exist. But now, you can recognize those moments for what they are. Echoes, not truths. Old survival strategies that once protected you, but no longer serve who you are becoming. And who you are becoming is someone who can hold their own experience with tenderness. Someone who can say, without shame, I need help. I am struggling. I matter. Someone who understands that vulnerability is not weakness, but the very foundation of authentic connection. Someone who knows, finally, that they were never the problem. The problem was an environment that could not see them. And now, at last, you are learning to see yourself. There is something both heartbreaking and beautiful about the human capacity to survive what should have broken us. The child who learned to make themselves invisible did not give up on connection. They simply learned to seek it in the only way that felt as safe, by becoming whatever others needed them to be. This is not failure. This is the stubborn insistence of the human spirit to find a way forward, even through terrain that offers no clear path. When you begin to heal from emotional neglect, you join a lineage of people who are interrupting cycles that may have run through families for generations. Your grandmother, perhaps, who also learned to silence her needs. Your father, who was taught that emotions were weakness. The unspoken rule passed down like an heirloom. We do not speak of what we feel. We endure. We survive. We do not ask for more than survival. But you are asking for more. And in that asking, you are not just healing yourself. you are offering a different possibility to everyone who comes after you. The children you may raise, say, or teach, or simply encounter will know something your childhood self did not. That feelings are not inconvenient interruptions to life, but the very texture of being human. That needing others is not shameful, but essential. That visibility, far from being dangerous, is the birthright of every person who draws breath. This is how transformation ripples outward. One person learns to turn toward their own pain with compassion, and suddenly they can turn toward others with that same compassion. One person stops apologizing for their existence, and suddenly they give permission to everyone around them to do the same. One person says, quietly but firmly, "I matter," and the people who love them begin to believe that they matter too. There is a concept in psychology called post-traumatic growth. It is the idea that suffering, while never something to be grateful for, can sometimes break us open in ways that allow for profound transformation. People who have walked through the valley of their own pain often emerge with a clarity and depth that those who have only known comfort cannot access. They become more empathetic, more present, more capable of holding complexity. They learn that strength is not the absence of vulnerability, but the willingness to be vulnerable anyway. You did not choose what happened to you as a child. You did not choose the silence, the absence, the slow erosion of your sense that you mattered. But you can choose what happens now. You can choose to stop passing the wound forward, to stop treating yourself with the same emotional starvation you were fed. You can choose to become, for yourself and for others, the presence that was missing. This does not mean you must forgive those who fail to see you. Forgiveness, when it comes, must be freely chosen, not forced as some final requirement for healing. Some wounds are too deep for forgiveness, some absences too vast, and that is okay. You can heal without forgiving. You can move forward without reconciliation. Your healing belongs to you, not to those who caused the hurt. What it does mean is that you are no longer waiting, not waiting to be seen, to be chosen, to be deemed worthy of attention. You are seeing yourself. Every time you set a boundary, or speak your truth, or allow yourself to be imperfect and still loved, you are showing that child that it is safe now, that the long wait is over, that they can stop performing, stop shrinking, stop earning their right to exist. This is the deepest work of being human, to reclaim what was lost, to tend what was neglected, to build within yourself the home you never had. It is work that takes time, work that happens in spirals rather than straight lines, with setbacks and breakthroughs and long stretches where it feels like nothing is changing at all. But it is work worth doing, because at the end of it, or perhaps more accurately, woven throughout it, is the possibility of living not as a ghost haunting your own life, but as a full person, seen and seeing, connected to yourself and to others in ways that once seemed impossible. You were not meant to be invisible. You are meant to be exactly this, messy and complex and full of feelings that matter, human in all the ways that count. If you were that child, the one who learned to make yourself small, the one who waited in doorways, hoping someone would turn around, the one who convinced yourself that needing less would make you easier to love, I want you to know something. You were not too much. You were never too much. Your feelings were not inconvenient. Your needs were not burdensome. Your presence was not something to be tolerated, but something to be cherished. The failure was never yours. It belonged to a world that did not yet know how to see you, but you can see yourself now. You can turn toward that small person you once were and offer them what no one else did. Attention without conditions. Presence without judgment. The simple, radical act of witnessing. You can say to them, and mean it, I see you. I have always seen you, and you matter more than you were ever allowed to believe. This is not about fixing what is broken. You are not broken. You are someone who learned to survive in an environment of emotional scarcity, and survival required you to become invisible. But survival and living are not the same thing. And now, finally, you have the opportunity to live, not as a ghost, not as a convenient version of yourself, but as the full, complicated, gloriously imperfect person you have always been beneath the armor. The path will not be easy. There will be days when the old patterns feel stronger than your new awareness, when invisibility feels safer than the terrifying vulnerability of being seen. That is okay. Healing is not linear. It is not a destination you arrive at and then remain. It is a practice, a choosing, a daily returning to yourself, even when yourself feels like foreign territory. But every time you return, the territory becomes more familiar. Every time you choose presence over performance, authenticity over approval, you are rewiring something deep. You are teaching your nervous system that it is safe now, that you do not have to earn your existence, that you can be loved not for what you do or how little space you take up, but simply for the irreplaceable fact of being you. You matter now. You have always mattered. And the world needs what you have been hiding. Your truth, your voice, your particular way of seeing and feeling and being that exists nowhere else. The invisibility was never your nature. It was only ever your protection. And you do not need that protection anymore. It is time to be seen. Not by everyone, not all at once, but by the person who matters most. By you. Welcome home.